Today, Fox will be teaching you how to set up a business router. This is part 2 of usually a 2 to 3 part series. In this video, we will be going through the VPN settings, some system tool settings, along with the firewall and behavior control settings. So let's begin. So starting with the VPN, once you're logged into your router station, you want to go ahead and click on the VPN tab. There are 3 types of VPNs that you could set up on this page. So one is the IPsec policy, and this is going to appear when you have either a L2TP, a PPTP, or a IPsec connection. Now the IPsec will allow you to connect 2 businesses together. So you have 2 businesses in 2 locations. You would be able to tunnel the traffic between those 2 businesses, so the 2 servers at those 2 locations will communicate through encryption over the internet. And it's very useful for large businesses that are growing through different locations and gaining new office space. For an IPsec SA connection, you would just create the policy here. So you would enter in the policy name, and then you would configure it to either be LAN to LAN for business to business office, or client to LAN. And then you would type up the remote gateway of your edge router at the other location. So say for example, this router at this location is 10.0.0.1, and at the other office it would be 10.0.0.2. So you would put 10.0.0.2 to link the other edge router on your other office network here, and then you would go ahead and make sure that it was selected for WAN 1. You would type up your local subnet and then your remote subnet along with your pre-shared key. There are some advanced settings, but usually you don't have to manipulate those for it to work properly. Next, we will configure the client to LAN VPN. So here you want to click on the L2TP tab, then you want to go ahead and click on Add. You will go ahead and add your WAN, or the different WANs that you have. For me, I only have one. And then you would add IPsec encryption. You could either choose unencrypted, encrypted, or auto. And then you would type up your pre-shared key. It could be 128 characters long. Once you enable that and create it, you want to go over to users. And then you want to create a new user account. So you click on add. You add an account name that will gain access to the VPN along with the account password. Then you would want to select the protocol. So of course for this one we want L2TP. The local IP address, which typically we would set it as the main edge router WAN IP. So for my device it's 192.168.0.5. And then it's hiding behind another router. So you want to just make sure that you have the IP address in the local IP address here. And then the address pool. So you would already have had to create a VPN pool, which I will show you in just a moment. You would enter in the DNS address. Typically you could use Google, that should be fine. So you would put 8888. And then network mode, you want to select either LAN to LAN if you're using office to office, or for my case scenario, we would use client to LAN. Then from here you could select max connections. Typically you want to use about 1 to 2 if it's only going to be one person accessing that VPN network. However, if you have more connections or more devices, then you would want to add the according digits and value. Next is the remote subnet, and we could leave this blank because essentially once you select client to LAN, it will cancel it out. So here's the final product for the Office VPN. Now we're not done yet. So of course, to create this, we need to go to Preferences and create a VPN IP pool. So as you can see here, I created the VPN office and then the pool of IP addresses that the users will get. Alright, next we want to go ahead and add the 3 ports for services. So we want to go to Preferences, Service Type, And then we want to add 3 different services. This will consist of the VPN service type name, the protocol, which is UDP, and then the port range. So for the VPN, we need to open up ports 500, ports 1701, and port 4500. Then for the destination port, that would be the same requirement. So 500, 500, or for our case, we would need to open up 500, 1701, and then 4500. As you can see, we created 3 of the VPN ports, along with 2 other ports, but we could ignore this port right here. And so for 13, 14, and 15, we opened port 500, 1701, and 4500. And this would be the final configuration setting that we want to use. Next, we want to go to the firewall access control, and then we want to go ahead and click on add. We want to add 4 more ports. Of course, we want to block telnet, which gives us the capability to log into our router remotely, but we don't want that enabled. And then the ports for the VPN. And so we just go ahead and go to add, give it a name of the port. We want to allow the service, and then we want to find the service in the name that we created. For each one, we already opened up each port. So as you can see, I have the template service type right here. And then for the interface, we want to select all. Source, we want to select IP group any. And then destination, we want to select IP group any. And for the effective time, it depends how you created your time frames. But for me, I will select any. And then click OK. And this is what it should look like at the end. So it should have the port name, the source, the destination, the policy to allow that port, and then the service type. Next, we go over to transmission, and we want to click on NAT. From here, we want to click on one-to-one NAT and create the VPN creation between the WAN, IP for this edge router, and your public IP. Once we enable that, we want to make sure that DMZ forwarding is enabled. Next, we want to log into your internet service provider's router, and we want to make sure that we have ports 500, 170, and 4500 forwarded. So that way you could get a VPN connection from outside the office. Then next, we will test the VPN connection on a cell phone and see if it works. To make sure that you're connected, you could always check the VPN tab, click on your IPsec, and make sure that the servers connecting to the remote gateway, the local subnet, and the remote sub-host. You could also click on L2TP to make sure that your tunneling list contains a name. And so for this case scenario, I will go ahead and log in to see if my name and my account appears. So I'll go ahead and take my cell phone and log directly into the VPN. Now, as you can see, after I signed in with my phone, you could view the remote IP, the remote local IP, along with the account name and server mode. Now you have successfully configured a VPN router. So there's various things that you could do with this router that makes it very powerful to control your business, such as load balancing. For having multiple WAN connections or multiple internet service providers, this allows you to make sure that your network is balanced and all your workers are getting the appropriate bandwidth for each computer. Next, we want to click on behavior control and view the web group and web group filtering. These two tools have very powerful capability for you to block certain users from the internet. So for example, you have a department that is the accounting department, and you don't want the accounting department to have access to any kind of internet whatsoever other than the internal network that you provide them. You would be able to block them or put them on a web group or web group filtering basis. You could also use web security to give your workers more web security. Now, every time I enable this, it somewhat blocks the internet on this router. So there needs to be more studying on my end to make sure I know what I'm doing, but it appears that it just blocks certain groups of IP addresses or blocks certain HTTP post requests. So it's very good for web security to ensure that all your devices are getting the best secure connection to the internet. To configure a VPN client connection to your office on your phone or on a network device, you would first need to open up your VPN provider or your connection and then enter and give it a name. From there, you want to select L2TP, IPsec, PSK, or if you use PP2P, then you would choose that according to your authorization method. Next, you want to enter in the server address. That would be your public IP address that you forward your ports to. So you would have to enter in your public IP address there. Next, you want to go to IPsec pre-shared key. You'd want to enter the pre-shared key here, and then the username for that account, along with the password. You'd want to save the VPN connection and then try to connect. And then if you're on an outside network, and then you're trying to connect to your business, it should work. If you need troubleshooting help, I will include links in the description below. Next is session limit. Session limit allows you to control the amount of connections that each computer has on the network. Now, for this example, we would have to create an IP group for each section. However, for this demo, we actually included every IP on the LAN, and it allows them 100 sessions for device. So essentially, how it works is each computer will have a connection to the internet depending on their web page. So if you have about 20 web pages open, there's going to be about 20 connections for that one computer. And so if it reaches the threshold of the max sessions, the computer will no longer be able to actually connect to the internet. And so it's something to do with more controlling over how many pages and how many clients could connect to the internet at one single time. So it allows you to really shape your business's network to ensure that your workers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Then you have session monitor. From here you can see how many computers and how many sessions they have. So each computer, based on the max sessions, will get that many sessions per computer and per IP address. And that's basically how it works. You would be able to see the list here and how it functions. Once a computer hits that max sessions, it will no longer be able to connect to any more other web pages. So it's very useful, like I said, for controlling your business's network. Next, we have load balancing. Load balancing allows you to take 2 WAN connections or more and balance out the internet service that they use. So that way devices are optimally running and not losing any kind of business to downtime. Very good if you're running a website and you need that load balancing for making sure that website is always up and running. For this case scenario, we will not enable it, but there will be links to this manual and more information about load balancing in the description below. Next is link backup. Link backup allows you to have a secondary link to the internet. And like I said, it creates redundancy so that way it ensures your workers are always connected to the internet and your business is always connected to the outside world. And then the final tab for this setting and load balancing is the online detection. This allows you to see which ports and status is on or offline. This is good to use when you're trying to troubleshoot to find out if your load balancer kicked in and why there's a loss of internet when you have 3 internet service providers. So as a business, you probably will have multiple aggregate links to the internet. You'll probably have multiple internet service providers and multiple internet connections. So this is where you want to make sure that your IT technician uses this load balancing capability to ensure uptime is at 100%. Now, the last few settings of this router, we will go into very short amount of time. I'm not going to really give a lot of description or detail as to what the settings do, other than essentially the title. So the routing, you have on this tab, static routing, policy routes, and routing table. Now, routing table should give you a routing table of all your devices, or at least the devices that are connected as far as to the internet and how it's getting internet. If you want to learn more about routing policies and static routing, I will leave the information in the description below. There's a bunch of videos online about it, so I suggest you definitely research if you have a business to find out how it could optimize the way you run your business. The next setting is Authentication Settings. Here we would click on enable, and then it looks like it allows you to have a certain amount of time for web authentication. Now, this is something that we're not going to go into, but it looks like you're able to customize your actual login page and the way your company remotes into the router. So it's very good if you want your own company logo, your own company splash page before your IT admin logs in, just to make it look more official. And then you have a setting about guest resources, which we're not going to go into depth about. Then you have the user management. You have configuration backup, which you could basically back up your file, your actual setting for your router. So you just click on backup, you save it to your local computer, and then from there you could always restore the backup once you do any changes. Then you have your authentication status. Next is Dynamic DNS. Dynamic DNS allows you to get a URL that connects to all the services on your router. So say, for example, if you had multiple servers that you want to access from the outside world, but you don't want to use your public IP address to access them, you would want to use Dynamic DNS. This gives you the capability to access your local resources on your network using a web page rather than a public IP address. There's more videos about this subject online, so I'd suggest you definitely look up how Dynamic DNS works and how it can make your business run more efficiently. So that's basically everything that you would want to know as a business to have an edge router that protects your network. It gives you flexibility and control over the devices on your network, along with the capability to have a remote session or connect to office locations securely with encryption using VPN. There are other settings inside of the system tools that we're not going to cover in this video, but I suggest you definitely look up how they function and how they work so that you could become a better system administrator and IT technician. So of course, the final step of securing your edge router is to make sure that you scan it with Nmap or some kind of security program that finds vulnerabilities to ensure that your device is completely secure before you implement it on the network. So for my case scenario, we will run Nmap on the WAN side of the router, and we will run Nmap on the LAN side of the router. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So we have to add sudo nmap dash lowercase s, uppercase s, and then dash dash script along with the following command. And we'll do the same for this one as well. So we just got to make sure that we have sudo in front of nmap command. And then we go ahead and enter our password. And this takes about 5 to 10 minutes to scan the device, so we'll let it do its thing and we'll come back and view the results. Alright, as we can see after both scans for the WAN side of the IP address and the LAN side, there is no vulnerabilities. However, it will give us a report on what ports are open. Now that's perfectly fine if ports are open as long as you're using them for certain services. However, if there's a vulnerability, you would see it right here. It would say basically vulnerability, and then it would state the kind of vulnerability. So for both IP addresses, the router is all secure. The final thing that you want to do is make sure that your VPN connection is completely encrypted. So to do that, you basically want to use Wireshark. Inside of Kali, it already has Wireshark, but essentially you want to capture the packets before the VPN is activated. And then you want to sign on to the VPN while the Wireshark program is still recording. And then you should be able to capture the connection to that VPN and make sure that there's no traffic being revealed through the internet. Essentially, it should be completely encrypted, and you should not be able to read the contents of that connection. We're not going to try it on this video, but you could definitely try it out for yourself. It's fairly easy and self-explanatory. You can find plenty of videos online about how to use Wireshark to record certain traffic on your network. Essentially, after you record your VPN connection, then you want to filter it by the IP address of your device that you were connecting to, or the device name, and then you should be able to see that the connection was completely encrypted. If you enjoyed this video, please give a like. And if you need any consulting needs, don't hesitate to contact Telefox today.